Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome back to another week of the Parsha, Parshas Devorim, a new Sefer. We'd like to dedicate tonight's shir for a refuah shalema for Shena Bas Dina. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give her menuchas hanefesh and peace of mind and a very big refuah. Bezrat Hashem. There's never any coincidences in the weekly Torah portion. Everything always falls out exactly where it's supposed to. And this week, of course, is like no other. It's Parshas Devorim, which is called Shabbos Chazayin, because the Haftarah that we read is from Yeshaya, all about the vision of the Chorban, of the destruction. And this Shabbos is going to be Erev Tisha B'Av, and Tisha B'Av is going to happen starting on Saturday night. The laws are going to be halachically a little bit different than a regular Tisha B'Av. How we're going to celebrate Shabbos will be different. How we're going to go into Tisha B'Av will be different. But Shabbos is Erev Tisha B'Av. So whatever we are reading on this Shabbos in Shul, whatever parsha we're going to be able to hear and learn and see the messages that are there, there should be at least one thing, if not more, that's going to be a chachana preparation for Tisha B'Av. And of course, there is one and there is more, and I'd like to share with you one idea tonight. Moshe Rabbeinu is right now in the final days of his life. I think that it's from the beginning of the parsha, it seems that it's the final week in the life of Moshe Rabbeinu. So all of Sefer Devorim, which is all the parshas that we're going to read the next maybe 10 or 12 weeks, until we're going to get to the Simchas Torah, the end of the Torah, it's all speaking about the last week in the life of Moshe till we finally get to the last day in his life. And a lot of the entire book of Devarim is all the Musar, is the rebuke and the criticism that he's giving to Klal Yisrael for the nation that we became all of those 40 years in the wilderness. The complaints and the kvetching and the arguments and the fighting and the difficulties and the hardships. Moshe Rabbeinu wants the Jewish people to remember the impression that they made on him, and that as we're going to leave Moshe and the baton will be passed on to Yeshua and we're going to go into the land of Eretz Yisrael, we have to try our best to be the most upstanding and outstanding nation that we could be. So one of the things that Moshe Rabbeinu writes and that he says is the following: Eicha eso levadi tarchachechem. How can I myself alone bear your burden, umasachem, your tarchachechem, your contentiousness and your burdens, uverivchem, and your quarrels? How can I do that? I'm the great Moshe Rabbeinu, and even Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us that with everything that he endured all of these 40 years in the wilderness together with our nation, it was not easy. And he's asking them the question, how could I alone bear this great burden of Klal Yisrael, taking care of all of your fights and all your arguments and all of your discord and all of your contentiousness and everything? What do you want from me? And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu goes on to say, he says, you need to get wise men and distinguished men and people of understanding that will know the tribes and appoint them as your heads. Because I'm leaving, says Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm not going to be here forevermore. This is the last week of my life. On the 7th day of Adar, I'm going to pass and expire from this world, and you're going to be on your own. And he's almost like saying, it's enough of bearing the burden already of the Jewish people. It's a lot. So the word that he uses to ask the question of how he can bear the burden is eicha, the word eicha. Now we know that on the night of Tisha B'Av and in the morning, many do in the morning as well, but at the night for sure, we read a Megillah, we read a book from the prophets, Yirmiyahu HaNavi, and that sefer, that book is called Eicha. And it speaks about the destruction of Yerushalayim, the destroying of the Beis HaMikdash, the terrible curses of the Torah that came true on Klal Yisrael. And it's a very, very somber, and if a person would actually read the words and understand even 25% of what is being read, it's enough to make anybody's hair stand on end. And the opening word in the opening line is Eicha Yashva Badad. How? And again, we have to translate what it means over here, but the way that in English they like to translate Eicha is alas. Alas is not the translation. Eicha Yashva Badad. How is it possible she sits by herself in solitude? Ha'ir Rabasi, the city that was great, with people. Haisa Kalmana Rabasi Bagoyim, she's now like an almana, she's like a widow. And Rabasi Bagoyim, the greatest of the people amongst the nations, Sharasi b'Medinos Haisalamas, now they become like a princess among the tribes. Everyone please turn off your phones. Eicha Yashva. That's what we're going to read on the night of Tisha B'Av. Eicha. This word Eicha, which literally, as we see in our Parsha, it means how. So what is the question that Eicha is asking? Eicha Yashva Badad. How is it possible that Yerushalayim is sitting by herself? Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Why is that a question? We live in a world between us and the Ribono Shel Olam where Klal Yisrael is judged with everything that we do, and it's always a midah keneged midah, a measure for measure. The way you act towards Hashem, that is the way that He acts towards you. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you a Beis HaMikdash, He gave you the temple, in Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh, and the Shechina is willing to dwell inside of that temple, and there's Kohanim, and there's Leviim, and there's Korbanos and sacrifices, and Klal Yisrael gathers together 3 times in a year for the Shlosheh Regalim. Hashem has given all of that to you. Don't you respect that? Don't you appreciate the privilege that HaKadosh Baruch has given to you? Don't you want to guard the Beis HaMikdash with all of your might? Of course. And you realize that, of course, the way in which you're going to protect the Beis HaMikdash is not only with Magen Am and soldiers and swords and the like, but you're going to guard the Beis HaMikdash, which is the spiritual home of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world, with our spirituality, our ruchnius, our Torah, our mitzvahs, our avodas Hashem, our adherence to the law, our dedication to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if the Jewish people are going to misuse the privilege that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us, and if Klal Yisrael is not going to toe the line that the Jewish people are supposed to by serving Hashem in the right way, and we're going to fall into the traps of sin over the years of getting desensitized to the holiness of the Shekhinah, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, if you don't appreciate what I've given you, and you don't respect what it means to be living in Yerushalayim, where there is a Beis HaMikdash, then you should know the consequence is going to be that you are going to be exiled from your land, and the Beis HaMikdash is going to have to be destroyed. So, Eicha, how could it be that suddenly this nation, this great place, Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh, is now sitting like a widow, like an almana? How could it be? Asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky, what's the question? We know how it could be. In every single stage of life of the Jewish people, there's always the response that Hashem does. Whatever we do down here triggers the spiritual response from Hashem. Why were we put into exile in Egypt? Because the Jewish people assimilated miserably, and so therefore we had to go through a whole cleansing process. Why was there an Inquisition? Why was there a Holocaust? Why were all these things? In every single stopping point in history, in every time of our gullus, of our exile, there's always been a reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu did what He did. So when He's going to destroy the temple, so then of course there's a reason why He did what He's going to do. So therefore, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, we have to understand this question differently. And the question is not, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do what he did, and how could he have done what he did? Because we know why Hashem does what he does. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he deals with us the way that we deal with him. But rather what he says is the following. And that is, Eicha is not questioning why Yerushalayim was destroyed, but rather how Yerushalayim was destroyed. Meaning, what was the sin of the Jewish people that brought about the destruction of Yerushalayim? Now remember, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's home. You never saw a contractor build one of these beautiful mansions on Avenida Hacienda, and then after it was up for like 10 years, 70 years, walk in there with a sledgehammer and destroy the thing to the ground. You'll never see such a thing. If a person built a beautiful home, and believe me, like the Gemara says, Mi shalai rasa Beis HaMikdash, whoever didn't see the Beis HaMikdash with their own eyes, they never saw a beautiful building in their entire life. The Beis HaMikdash was magnificent. It was marble, it was made of the finest of stone, it had the greatest of kalim, of vessels. Everything was in there. It was beauty beyond beauty. You can't even compare. The most palatial estate in the Palisades that unfortunately was burned down several months ago, it couldn't compare one little drop to what one room in the Beis HaMikdash looked like. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to go in and decide to destroy his Beis HaMikdash just because he's bored that day. The only reason that Hashem would destroy the temple is because it must be that we warranted and we did something wrong. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, what was it? And how could it have been that we did something that was so terrible that brought about the Jewish people's downfall? That we did it, that Hashem was so upset and so angry, he decides he has nothing left to do but to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. What did we do? Now we all know the famous Gemara. The Gemara tells us that the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed for the 3 cardinal sins. Gila Rayis, illicit relations, Shvichas Damim, murder, and Avodah Zarah, and idol worship. That's the first Beis HaMikdash. The second one is Sinas, Chinam, senseless hatred. Says the Gemara, which one is worse? The Gemara says, well, it's pretty obvious. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and 70 years later, they came back from their Golus in Bavel in Babylonia, and they came back to Israel, and they rebuilt the Beis HaMikdash. The second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed 2,000 years ago, and it's still lying in ruins. So it must mean that the sin of Sinas Chinam is so severe that it holds back the Geula, the redemption, from coming. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, if you look in the pasuk, what does it say? Eicha, how Yashva Badan, how could it be that this city is sitting in solitude right now? Rabasi Ha'ir Rabasi Am, a city that was great with people. Simple understanding. How could it be that the city of Yerushalayim, that was once filled with people, with many, many people, greatness with people, how could it be sitting all alone today? Everybody was kicked out. However, he writes, there's another way that you could read this verse. Eicha Yashva Badad. How does Yerushalayim sit all by itself? Ha'ir Rabasi Am, which means a city of great people. Not a city that was great with people, but a city of great people. And what is a city of great people? Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, these are people that consider themselves to be great, and they became haughty individuals. And as a result of the arrogance, it led them down the slippery slope of sin that they sunk into, until it got to the point where Hashem had no choice but to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Because a person is haughty, he destroys the Beis HaMikdash. A person walks around with their nose in the air and arrogance, therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides, well, the only thing I can do is destroy the Beis HaMikdash. It's the haughtiness that brings a person to the great sin of Sinas Chinam, of hating another Jew. Why would I hate another Jew? Again, sinas chinam means I don't really have such a good reason. Why would I hate another Jew? Not for really a good reason. I don't like the way that they look. I don't like the way that they laugh. I don't like the way that they walk. I don't like the way that they talk. I don't like their clothing. I don't like the color of their yarmulke. What is making me hate this person? Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, you know what's making them hate the person? Because they are a nation of great people, which means people that were inflated in their egos, and as a result of that, they looked down on others, and they came into the sin of sinas chinam, hating another Jew. If we would be humble individuals, if we would be low-key people, we would appreciate everyone that we came in contact with. Like the Gemara tells us, Eizeu Chacham, who is the wise man? Haloi made mikol adam, the one who learns from everyone. Only a humble person can learn from everyone. If I'm so great, and I'm so smart, and somebody that I look at as on a lower level than me wants to come and teach me something, so then I'm not going to learn from you. I'm much better than you. But if I'm an anav, if I'm humble, that means the chacham, the wise man, is a humble person. He's only craving and striving for wisdom, and whatever I need to do to acquire the wisdom, that is what I will do. And therefore, when he comes in contact with anyone, perhaps this person could offer me a piece of information, a nugget of wisdom that I never knew before. And therefore, the chacham, the wise man, he learns from everyone. The people in the time of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, the second temple, were people that were steeped in the sin of sinas chinam, hating another Jew. Says the pasuk over here, what brought them into that world? Their arrogance and their haughtiness. Because someone that is high on themselves, and someone that feels that they can do no wrong, and someone that feels their greatness that is just exuding in everything that they do. They're brilliant, they're smart, they're savvy, they have money, they're good looking, they have a good house, they have a nice car, they have all these things. Then I cannot tolerate the person that is not like me. And therefore, says Rav Chaim, the question is not, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do this? Or how could HaKadosh Baruch Hu have made the destruction? The question is, why? What did we do that was so wrong? And that's where the destruction begins. It begins in our inner destruction, where we become so full of ourselves, we don't have room inside of us to accept everyone else. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says the same thing about a haughty person. He says, with you being as haughty as you are, he says there is no room for ani ledorba, there's no room for me to dwell there in that place. So you know what he says? You're on your own. You're the haughty man. You think you're in control? You think you're so great? You think you're so incredible? So you know what? Take care of yourself. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm checking out for the night, or for the next century, or for the next 2,000 years. You're on your own. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu had already left the Beis HaMikdash before Titus came along and destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara uses a language of, he was just grinding that which was already ground, which means that the Beis HaMikdash was already basically destroyed, because the Jewish people pushed the Shekhinah away from the Beis HaMikdash. And once that the Shekhinah is not in the Beis HaMikdash anymore, it's just a bunch of rocks and stones and a beautiful structure and a building. But the strength and the character of Hashem is void. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not there protecting it and giving it all of its power, then Titus comes in and he destroys it. He just blows over like a little shack, because all of the power and the might of Hashem was no longer there. Says Hashem, you're haughty, you believe in yourself, you forgot about me, so then says Hashem, then I'll leave you all on your own, take care of yourself. And what happens then? Chorban, destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Now this is not the first time in the Torah that the word Eicha appears. It actually appears in the very, very beginning of time in the beginning of creation. If we go all the way back to Adam and Chava, the first man and woman in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, kind of like Klal Yisrael, we were in the Beis HaMikdash, that was our Gan Eden, we destroyed that. Adam and Chava, they were in their Gan Eden, their Garden of Eden, of paradise, and they destroyed that. And the Torah tells us, as we know, we've spoken about it many times over the years, and that is that they had one thing that they're not allowed to do. You are not allowed to eat from the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, the tree of knowledge of good. That's it. You can eat from this tree and from that tree and that tree. You can go here, go there, do whatever you want. One thing you're not allowed to do. And if you do, Mois Tamus, you're going to die. Certainly, there'll be curses that are going to come to the world. It's not going to be a pretty picture. And they made a mistake. They ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We've spoken about it before. We're not going to go into the entire explanation tonight. They made a very big mistake. And suddenly the Torah tells us, V'tipakachna einei shnehem. At the moment that they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the eyes of both Adam and Chava opened up. Were they walking around with closed eyes before? No. They suddenly saw something that they never saw before. V'yedu ki eiru mimhem, and they realized that they were naked. V'yisperu alei te'ena, and they sewed together the fig leaves. V'yasu lahem chagores, and they ended up making for themselves some kind of aprons or something to cover up their nakedness. So they're walking around naked from the moment that they are born, and they don't know that they are. And they eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and now they know that they are, and now they're exceedingly embarrassed. So the first thing they do is we've got to cover ourselves up. And they heard the voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu roaring through the garden. And they hid. They're trying to hide from Hashem, as if you could hide from Hashem. You know, it's like the kid who misbehaves and really does something terrible in the house. And the mother says, when your father gets home, woo, you're going to get it. And the kid goes into the room and he hides. And he hides under the bed, but he doesn't realize he has one leg sticking out from under the bed. And the father comes marching up the stairs and he says, Yankel, when I find you, ooh. And the kid's laughing to himself, I'm hiding under the bed, my father's not going to find me. And the father opens the door and he sees the leg sticking out from under the bed. Do you think you can hide from your father? Your father is always going to find you. Do you think that you could hide from Hashem? Their eyes were opened. What were their eyes open to? Did they lose their belief that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking over the entire universe? Yet they tried to hide. They were afraid. They were hiding amongst the trees in the garden. But their legs were sticking out. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw exactly where they were. Vayikra Hashem Elokim Ela Adam. And Hashem called out to man. And he said to him, Ayeka, where are you? Aleph, Yud, Chaf, Hey, Eicha. Ayeka, where are you, Adam? And the question, especially if we go based on what we said in our Megillah of Eicha, is, how could you have done this, Adam? How could you have eaten from the one thing that I told you not to eat from? I love you, I created you, I put you last in the creation so you should be able to enjoy the entire world all to yourself. How in the world could you have gone against my words? Ayeka, where are you? And that is the question that reverberates for thousands and thousands of years in the minds and the hearts of everyone. Ayeka, where are you? How have you done that? How are we doing what we are doing? How could it be that there's a Beis HaMikdash lying in ruins thousands and thousands of years? And still we have done nothing about it to bring it back. And therefore, says the Torah, the original Eicha, the original how, was Adam Arishon. Where are you, Adam? Now, why did Adam do such a thing? How could he have done such a thing? HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him not to. How could he have done such a thing? So perhaps if we bridge the gap of these two ideas together, so if I'm someone that is subservient to the Ribbono Shel Olam, I humble myself completely to the will of Hashem, then whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks me to do, that is what I'm going to do. Whatever He tells me not to do, I'm going to be sure I'm not going to do it. But if I lose my subservience, if I get sidetracked from the other things that there are in this world, if other people seem to be more tantalizing and exciting and more luring than what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling me, and I inflate my ego to the point where I decide I could actually go against what Hashem says, then I can eat from a tree of knowledge of good and evil in Gan Eden, or I could have sinas chinam, I could have hatred for another Jew in Yerushalayim Yar HaKodesh, surrounded by the Shechina and the Kedusha and all of Klal Yisrael. There's a beautiful story that I saw recently. You see the sensitivity of the Gedolei Yisrael, of the great leaders of Klal Yisrael. There was a fellow by the name of Jonathan, and he lived in the boondocks near a place called Bangor, Maine. Anybody ever hear of Bangor, Maine? Is that a yes? You heard of Bangor, Maine? Okay. Coach heard of Bangor, Maine. So there's a man named Jonathan, and he heard of a place, and he lived in a place called Bangor, Maine. And he was beginning his pre-med courses, and it was his journey on becoming a doctor. He was brilliant, he was put together, and he had his life in order. He was not Jewish, and Judaism certainly was the farthest thing in the world from his mind. I'm not a Jew, I'm in pre-med school, and I'm doing my job, and I'm trying to become a doctor, and that's it. There was a school function that took him from his comfortable surroundings in Bangor, Maine, and he ended up in New York City for the day. And while he was there in New York City, for the first time in his life, guess who he encountered? Jews. And my father was in the National Guard in the late 60s, early 70s, and he said that when he got to the National Guard, I think that they were basic training, I think it was in Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken, he said there was a decent percentage of other soldiers that were there that had never seen a Jew in their life. My father in 1969, 1970, was the first Jew that they ever, when my grandfather was in the American Army, he served in World War II, he told me that when he got to basic training, so one of the non-Jews came over to him and said, "Hey Jew, show me your horns, where are they?" Because as everybody knows that in the King James Version of the Bible, when it says that Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the mountaintop, Keren or Panav, that his face was enlightened with the light of the holiness, so Keren, which means radiating light, can also mean a horn. So they were very kind to translate that verse in the King James Version as, when he came down from the mountain with the horns on his head. So they said, "Jew, to my grandfather, where are the horns?" And he said, "I don't have any horns." So this fellow Jonathan, he never really came in contact with a Jew before. And he comes to New York, and he sees them. The yarmulke is on their head. He sees side locks, payas, beards, the whole thing. He's on the subway, in the days when it was safe to sit on the subway, and he's sitting next to none other than a religious Jew. And they strike up a conversation. And Jonathan is very intrigued. He's looking at this youngish fellow, beard, payas, black hat, black coat. And they start schmoozing, and they start talking. And the conversation was very enjoyable for Jonathan. At one point he said to the man, what's your name? And he said, Chaim. And he said, Chaim? No, Chaim. Yeah, and he taught him how to say his name, Chaim. And he saw that this fellow Jonathan was very genuine and very real. And he started asking many theological questions. And although that Chaim was not like so comfortable answering all the questions, he felt that Jonathan is really asking. At the end of their subway ride, Jonathan turns to Chaim and he says, I'm fascinated by this conversation. I'd like to continue it if you don't mind. Could you give me your telephone number so I could call you? Now you have to know, for a Hasidic man in New York on the subway, to be sitting next to a non-Jewish fellow named Jonathan, strike up a conversation, and then the guy says, by the way, could I have your number? It's not usually the first thing that he gives out is his telephone number to strangers. But something was telling him, this guy is very sincere. Who knows? So he gave him his number. Jonathan goes back to Bangor, Maine, gets back into his freeway, but the light switch, the spark is lit already. And he's got all these questions. He goes to the library. And he starts taking out every book that he could find in the library about what it means, Judaism and the Torah and the Bible and the Jewish people. And when he gets a whole list of questions together, he calls his good friend Chaim. And they have deep conversations. And at a certain point, he says to Chaim, after maybe about 1 year or so of all of his discoveries, do you think it would be possible I could come to your house for Shabbos? Chaim says yes. And he invites his new friend Jonathan to the house for Shabbos. To make a long story short, this began the next 2-year journey of Jonathan's life as he began to undergo the conversion process. And 2 years later, he converted very happily, and he took on the name Avraham, and now he's Avram, and he goes off to learn in yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. Unbelievable success story. He goes off to Israel. He's learning for several years. He gets introduced to a wonderful young lady whose name is Sarah, Avram and Sarah, okay? And they get married, and Baruch Hashem, everything is wonderful, and they come back to live in New York. They have a baby boy. And Avram is so excited, probably the name of Yitzchak, I guess. Avram, Sarah, and Yitzchak, they're so excited. A baby boy. He's thinking to himself, look where I came from, Bangor, Maine. I met Chaim on the subway. Look at the hashkach, everything worked out. Now I'm a Yid, Avram Avinu. Here's my wife, Sarah. We have a baby boy. Wow, I'm so excited. He was very close to Rabbi Avigdor Miller's Zatzal. And he lived in the neighborhood where Rabbi Miller was the Rav of his shul. And he built up a very nice connection with him over the years, and he was enthralled by Rabbi Avigdor Miller. He felt that he had the answer to every single question and a very deep understanding of Torah and of people. And he came and he shared the good news that they had a baby boy. The bris is going to be next week, and he said, Rabbi, would you please be the Sandek? So Rabbi Miller said to him, Avram, I would love to, but I'm not going to be around on that day, at that time. I won't be able to be the Sandek and hold the baby at the bris. So Ram said, Rebbe, what do I do? He says, there's a big tzaddik named Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. He's an older man right now. He's one of the Gedolei Ador. He lives now in Monsey. Maybe, I don't know, just maybe, he would be the Sandek by your bris. It's a long shot. I know he's an older man, but maybe he would. I don't know. You deserve somebody, chashiv, somebody prominent. So he said, okay, can't hurt. So he finds out where Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky is, and he goes all the way to Monsey. From New York to Monsey, it's not a short ride. That's probably about an hour and a half, maybe, ride. He gets to Monsey, and he meets with Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. And Rav Yaakov welcomes him in, and he says, what can I do for you? And he says, I'm a ger. I just had my first child. He said, really, my Rebbe is Rabbi Avigdor Miller, but he's not available for the bris. I asked him what I should do. He recommended that I come, and I asked Rabbi Kamenetsky if he could come to be the Sandek by the bris. And Rav Yaakov said, it will be my honor and my pleasure. And it was not an easy ride. He's an older man. He has to leave Monsey. He has to come and shop all the way to Brooklyn. He's then going to be there for the bris and then get back in the car and go all the way. Somebody said to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Rebbe, you don't even know the man. It's an hour and a half away. He could have found somebody else in Borough Park, in Brooklyn. For sure, he could have found somebody else. Why did you do it? Why did you push yourself to be the Sandik? And listen to the way that Gedolei Ador, the way the giants think. And he says, this man is a ger, he's a convert. He said, Rabbi Victor Miller already told him that he wasn't able to make it to the bris. In the mind of the ger, perhaps he begins thinking, maybe he doesn't want to be the Sandik by my baby. And then he comes and he travels all the way to me. Now, if I would have told him, I'm sorry, I'm an old man, I can't make it, great excuses. He would say, two great rabbis don't want to be the Sandik by my child's bris. And I'm afraid that he would be very hurt by such a thing. I'm not going to do that to another Jew. And therefore, I came to the bris. That's humility. That's a servant of Hashem. That is someone that has subjugated themselves to the ratzon, to the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm not in this for me. I'm in this for you, Ribono Shel Olam. His son, Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, who should live and be well, he's been very, very sick. The last week or so, he's in ICU, in semi-critical condition. Shmuel ben Ita Etel should have a refuah shlema. He learned from his father the same exact midah, the same exact traits. There's a famous story with Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, that there was a young woman, Balis Tshuva, who was coming to their house in Philadelphia for Shabbos. And these are in the ancient days where there was no Waze and there was no GPS. And all she had was a cell phone in her hand. And she got lost in somewhere in Philadelphia, and she did not know where she's going. So she calls the house of Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, the great Rosh Hashiva. And he answered the phone. And she said, Rabbi Kamenetsky, I'm lost. I don't know where I am. So he says, tell me, what street are you on? She stops the car. She looks. She says, I'm here and here. He said, oh, no problem. I know exactly where you are. He said, just keep going straight down that road. And now you're going to get to another street. It's called whatever. You're going to make a left. Keep going straight. He said, I'll stay on the phone with you. Don't worry. And she's driving. He says, now do you see that street over there? She says, make a right on that street. And you're going to take that street down for about 3 blocks. So now when you get down to the end of the 3rd block, I want you to look up. You're going to see a little old man waving his hand at you. You'll know that you got to my house. So she's driving and driving and driving and driving. And she looks up, and there's Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky on the phone, waving his hand, the little old man saying hello. And he says, here I am, you made it, Baruch Hashem. That's the humble way of the Jewish people. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. Says the Megillah of Eicha, which we're going to sadly read on the night of Tisha B'Av. And like I said, there are many people that read it during the daytime as well. Eicha. And the question is, how is it possible that a city of Yerushalayim that was filled with Kedusha, that was filled with Torah, that was filled with Kohanim and Korbanos and Sacrifice and everything, how is it possible that we could have sunk to such a level where we're going to be destroyed? Ha'ir Rabasi Am. It is the city of great people, of the city where people made themselves great, and they went into the world of arrogance. And once you go into there, you will go and enter into the realm of sinas chinam, of hating another Jew. We have no right to hate anyone. If they're Rasha, Marusha, the wicked of the wicked, okay, it's a different story. But even if it's someone that has done wrong to you and hurt you and offended you, you're not allowed to hate them. Because in my humility, I recognize that everything that is happening in my life is from the Ribono Shel Olam. And this person would not have been able to hurt me or to affect my life if HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not want them to and allow them to. And if I get angry with that person, I'm really getting angry with Hashem, and that's not company that I want to be in. And therefore, says the Megillah of Eicha, when a person begins to examine And they begin to look and they begin to understand that the reasons that all these things happen is because we got too inflated in our egos, and that brought us into the world. Lashon Hara, how could you speak Lashon Hara? Do you want people to speak Lashon Hara about you? The Horowitz says that when the Gemara writes that the reason the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed was because of Sinas Chinam, it's not only Sinas Chinam, it's talking about Lashon Hara as well. Evil gossip and speech. Do you like it when people speak bad about you? Would you like to know that there's people sitting at their Shabbos table talking about you and your family? Would you like that? I don't think so. Would you like to know that there's two friends that are taking a walk down the street and they have nothing else to talk about besides you? I don't think so. So then why is it okay at our Shabbos table to speak about other people and their families? Why is it okay on our walks to talk about other people? Why is it okay for us and our wives to sit around late at nights and talk about all the people that are bothering us? Why is that okay? It's not okay. Just like we would not want others to do that about us, we can't do that about them. But what's the underlying siba, the cause that brings it about? Says Chaim Kanievsky, gaiva, arrogance, haughtiness. When I am better than everybody else in my own eyes, then I have disdain and I don't have the proper respect for other people. And then I say Lashon Hara, then I speak, then I have Sinas Chinam, and that itself brings about the destruction. So we think about the question that Hashem asked to Adam Arishon in the Garden of Eden, Ayeka, where are you? And everybody has to ask themselves on Tisha B'Av, Ayeka, where are you? Where are we in our lives between us and Hashem? Are we subservient to Hashem? Ayeka, where are we in our relationships to other Jews? Are we Oyev Yisrael? Are we ones that love Klal Yisrael? Or Chalila V'chas, we are the Seinei Yisrael, we hate other Jews? Ayeka, where are you? Are you inflated in your ego? Are you someone that is humble and you are able to look and see the good in others and not look and see the bad? Are we people that are guarding our mouths from Lashon Hara? Or are we people, Ayeka, where are you? Are we sitting around the table and we're just hashing it all out? Some people think that Shabbos meals were created for Lashon Hara. Because they think to themselves, you know what? We're never sitting around the table all together. I'm busy working all week and she's busy shopping all week and my kids are busy at school all week. We're never together. So you know, we finally get together on Friday night and now we can just like catch up on all the juicy gossip from the week that we didn't get to share with each other. That's not what Shabbos is for. Shabbos is for Kedusha. Shabbos is for Divrei Torah. Shabbos is for bonding together as a family with radiance of Shabbos and holiness and sanctity. That's what it's for. Ayeka, where are you? Where are we? And just like Adam Arishon thought that he could hide from Hashem, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it very clear, you can't hide. Now, maybe you can imagine like you're like in the tree somewhere like that. You can't. You can't hide from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just like the kid can't hide from his father, the leg is always sticking out. So the Ayeka is not Hashem saying, where are you? I don't find you. It's Ayeka, I want you to think, where are you, Adam? If you were the greatest of all the creations, and now you're hiding in fright from me, what did you do to get to that place? Oh, you didn't listen to me. Why didn't you listen to me? Oh, you thought you knew better than me? Oh, that's the downfall of man. Hashem always knows best, and our mission in life, our job in life, is to the best of our abilities to subjugate ourselves, to submit ourselves, to humble ourselves to Hashem. In that way, we live a life of Avas Yisrael. We live a life of humility. We live a life where sins are something that are farther away because we're always trying to do the ruts and the will of Hashem the best that we possibly can. I want to leave you off with one more story of this whole concept of the humble man and what it is that he could accomplish as a result of humility to engender Avas Yisrael, the love between Jews, and just to know how far-reaching that love can go in a person's life. There was a young man in yeshiva, and his name was Ami. And he was not, to say the least, he was not the best boy in the yeshiva. Bit of a troublemaker, maybe ADD, ADHD, DHD, whatever he had. He was not able to sit still, pay attention, follow through, and really yeshiva was really hard for him. So he used to doodle a lot in his class. He had a notebook and he would doodle all the time. But that got boring after a while. How much can you doodle? How many pictures can you draw? So he found out that he was very good with his hands. And one of the things that he was able to do masterfully with his hands was to make paper airplanes. Now most of us, when we make paper airplanes, you throw it and it's hitting the ground before it even leaves your hand. That's how bad our paper airplanes are. But Ami was an expert in the field of paper airplanes, aerodynamic paper airplanes. He could make it and he could shoot it across the room, and he normally would hit his target. One day, they're sitting in shir, and it's what's called shir klali. Shir klali means the shir, the Gemara class that the Rosh Yeshiva gives to the entire yeshiva. So if you have, like, let's say 5 different rabbis in the yeshiva, and normally each one gives their own private class, one day a week the Rosh Yeshiva gives what's called shir klali, the shir that encompasses everyone, and the whole yeshiva is there. So let's say, I don't know, a couple hundred boys are sitting in the room, and the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Yosef, is giving a shir, and Ami is bored out of his mind. So he just innocently starts taking his papers and creasing them together and smoothing them out, and he makes like a FB bomber, whatever it is. He makes an amazing, amazing plane. And he's looking somewhere around, one of his friends sitting somewhere near the front row, and he saw the Rosh Yeshiva is like really into his learning, he's not paying attention at all. So he's going to take the plane, he's going to shoot it right at his friend while the Rosh Yeshiva is giving a class. And so he takes the plane and the problem is that he just overshot his friend a little bit, and the paper airplane comes flying up right onto the stender of the Rosh Yeshiva in the middle of his shir klali that he's giving to the entire yeshiva. You could imagine the gasp that took place in the room. And the Rosh Yeshiva stopped his shir. And he looks at the paper airplane, and he looks out at the crowd of boys that is there. And he said that this is such an embarrassment to the Torah that we are learning. Whoever is the young man who threw this paper airplane, I need you to stand up and walk out of the Beis Midrash right now. Now, I cannot tell you that in today's world, a mechanech would do such a thing, because today's world, you could probably destroy a kid for life. But in that time, all the way back then, that's what he said. And the place is dead silent. Nobody is moving. And the Rosh Yeshiva says, once again, this is such an egregious act to the cover, to the honor of the Torah. Whoever is the young man who threw the airplane, please exit the Beis Midrash right now, or else I will not continue the class. Silence in the room. Everyone is looking around at each other. Who's gonna go? Now, not everybody knew that Ami is the one that threw it. So suddenly, after this very long silence that is there, the best boy in the entire shir, a boy by the name of Nachum Galinsky, who is the genius son of Rav Yankele Galinsky, who was one of the great rabbis of Bnei Brak, stands up, hangs his head low, and he walks out of the Beis Midrash. And when the Yeshiva saw him leave, he went right back to giving his shir. Now everybody knew that he could not have thrown it. This is the best guy in the yeshiva. There's no way that he threw it. And there was a lot of rumors going around the next few days in the yeshiva, and before you knew it, the whole episode was finished. It was over. This young man, Nachum Galinsky, was a very bright future in front of him. They thought he's going to become probably one of the Gedolei Ador, one of the leaders of our generation. Sadly, many years later, he came down with the machla, with cancer. And although they were storming the heavens on his behalf and people were doing mitzvahs and everything, it was not meant to be. And at a relatively young age, Nachum Galinsky passed away, leaving behind, it seems over here from the story, leaving behind even wife and children and the like. In the Shiva house, it was all friends and family and acquaintances that were coming, streaming in the Shiva house all week long. And one day a fellow comes in and nobody recognizes who he is. And he keeps inching himself closer and closer and closer till he's sitting right in front of the family. And he says, "You don't know me. My name is Ami. And I want to tell you the story of your son, your brother, your father. I want you to know who he was." And he tells over the whole story. And he says, "Your brother, nobody believed in a million years that he is the one that threw the airplane. But he did it, and he saved my face. Why? Because I want you to know something. I was not a good kid in yeshiva. And I was always one step from getting kicked out. And if I would have got caught on that day being the one that threw the airplane, I'm almost certain the Rosh would have kicked me out. And then where I would have ended up? On the street? Another yeshiva? Fooled out around over here? Gotten kicked out over there? Who knows if I would even be frum today?" He said, but because of Nachum, that he didn't want someone to get embarrassed and someone to get in trouble, he was willing to take it on himself. It's only because of him that I'm standing here as a frum Jew today. The more humble that a person is, the more of a servant to Hashem that they are, the more that they build inside themselves Avas Yisrael, the love of their fellow Jew, then we can act in ways that express that love. We can push away the sinas chinam, the hatred that we have. We can embrace every single Jew and see the good that is inside of them. And in that zechus, instead of sitting on the floor on Tisha B'Av night and crying, Eicho, how could it be, Hashem, that they did such a thing? We'll say like we say at the very, very end of Eicha, where we say, at least in the middle, Chazdei Hashem ki le'isomnu ki l'chol rachamav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your chesed never wanes, it will never be destroyed, because you are going to bring us back to Yerushalayim HaKodesh, b'imheira v'yameinu. This probably will be the last Parsha class for the duration of the summer. If I find time to record one and send it out, Glinetta, but otherwise the official class with the sold-out crowds in front of us and on Zoom over here will pick up sometime as Hashem in the month of Elul. So have a wonderful summer, easy and a meaningful fast, and in Mitzvah Hashem we'll see each other in the Bayis Shlishi, B'imheira v'yameinu.